All right, so welcome everybody to Pace of the Waterfront. I'm Lee Dominic, aka Crane Daddy, and I got a special guest today. We're going to talk a little bit about the union, we're going to talk a little bit about leadership, and we're just going to dive right into it. My guest today is Jay Luera, and Jay has been a union member for over 40 years. He's served with the union, but I'm going to let him introduce himself and tell us a little bit about himself. So, Jay, do me a favor and just give me a little bit of background about your history and in the union.
I started when I was 18, almost 19 years old. I worked on the tugboats and barges, fueling up the ships with fuel, about 18, 19. And then about 21, 22 years old, I became a member of the ILWU, a registered ID, in 1982, January.
What kind of changes, Jay, have you seen over your 40 years?
The growth of the union, the size of the union, and the members understanding what their union obligations or responsibilities are. It's become more the union members don't understand how much they need to respect themselves and the union and their jobs, because it's given them much more. But I think grew so big and so fast, we haven't been able to retain that tighter knit group with expansion of the union.
So, what was your role like? What did you do when you served in the union? When did you serve?
Board, caucus delegate, other various committees, trademark, registration, secretary, treasurer, other things, relief BAs, voluntary committees over the years that I served.
What kind of challenges do you see the union facing right
now? Understanding of that there's always going to be changes. I've been here when I was young, and I believe things stay the same. This is how we are. When you're young, you have a lot of testosterone, a lot of energy, and that could be a youthful person at 50 and a youthful person at 20. When you're young in the union, you come in with all these ideological ideas about union, but unions now are shifting. My grandfather's battle in the 30s was not the battle of my father, and the battles where I am in is not to me the same as my son. So there's 4 generations, and things are always constantly changing. And the members, one thing, need to know that there will always be change. With the expansion and retraction of the union, the employers will always seek to have relief in payrolls and in manning. And that's the natural evolution of a union. You're always going to change and expand.
What about, I see so much automation happening down here. And I get nervous that 5 years, 6 years, I'm not going to have a job.
I don't see it that way. Automation is fine, but it's a very expensive operation. We have 3 types of automation, and it's very expensive. The one that does work good is very, very expensive and costly to the employers. But there's also a lot of other docks where they're not going to be able to fit automation in. You need, I believe, a perfectly rectangular terminal. A lot of terminals, due to the nature of the dock, are chopped up and sawtoothed. They're not even edges. So I don't know if that's going to be a perfect fit for everybody. I think we're going to have some, but not much more. But in my time, we had 1,500. We made 2,000 longshoremen 40 years ago. We now have, I believe, almost up to 9,000 longshoremen, another 15,000 casuals. So we're growing.
15,000 casuals?
17, I believe.
Wow. I had no idea we had that many people.
Yes. So a lot of people are afraid and fear, but we're always going to grow, because when your population grows in the country, there's always going to be demand for more things in your closets, your garages, for women's, the kitchen. Everybody's going to need products overseas. So that's going to keep the volume growing, because populations grow, and that's a necessity. I've seen in my day, we went from 1 million containers in 1982 to, I believe, we're now doing 17 million containers. 40 years. And We just have to be prepared to just keep fighting our fights, respecting what we do, and working with the employers. It's not fighting like we did in the 30s for wages, conditions, and hours. We have all of that. We're doing very well. We just need to preserve what we have and retain what we have. I'm not into the scaring people and saying, oh, the jobs are leaving, or you're not going to have a job. I'll be honest with you. My family has been here for almost 100 years. My grandfather started in the 30s, and I have a son, a fourth generation. And I honestly believe there'll be another 100 years of this job. I know some people may look at me like, yeah, sure. But I really believe it because there's no way to ship anything else. A container's a container. Unless they can send it through cyberspace, we have a job. But it's just how we're going to maintain our jurisdiction, how we're going to maintain our manning and our jobs. Be smart. This is a different time. We're a union, but there's also a business, and we have to be business thinking with the employers. We have to grow with them, and we have to show them that we're the one people that can do it. Because each longshoreman, from the ID to the crane driver or the boss or the supercargo clerk, has a certain amount of skill in them, and there's invested. Like each person has actually, they did it. They've invested money, and they've had them discover how much each employee is worth as a tool, like a UTR, a top hand, or crane. What's the investment in each person? And every person has a certain increment of money that they are worth to the employers.
Right.
And they have a huge investment. Like I have a lot of talent, and I've worked almost every category on the waterfront. So I don't know what my value would be, and anybody who has multiple skills and categories of training, they're worth more and more increments of money to the employers. So they do their little due diligence on what we're worth to replace. And they would be interested, but I think it's very hard to replace all the people. We know how to drive to the docks, how to be dispatched, how to train. A lot of people have more skill than they believe, and they need to have more confidence in themselves. And they should respect themselves and the union more, and we'll be tighter together as a family.
Right. So, Jay, I see, on my platform, I get a lot of younger guys to talk to me about the union and like voting for officers. And I'm going to be honest with you, man, I don't know a lot of our officers. So when I go to vote, I kind of call a friend that's kind of a little more involved than I am. And I just say, hey, man, who do you like? Who should I be voting for? Now, I know you don't like that. So, I mean, what is your take on that? What should a member be doing to make sure he's voting for the right guy?
Well, a lot of the people that they do vote for, they actually see them from time to time in their careers, or whether they're day or night. And a person I tell them to vote for a person that appears to be truthful, honest, hardworking, due diligent, and not somebody that makes them laugh or their friend. Somebody that'll bring out the best in themselves. And also look to find out, ask around of other people about that person. Not only who should I vote for, what have they done? Not have they only served the union. I believe a seasoned officer is a person who's worked every category. You've worked a rail, you've worked a UTR, you worked a top handler,
Right.
you ship gangs on the dock in the hole, driving cranes, machinery. That makes you a well-rounded longshoreman. And when you serve the union and you work with the union against the employers and LRC and labor relations, you have a fundamental understanding of all things that will come at you, and you will know how to protect the union's rights and positions on all categories by working all conditions. So ask everybody, what did that person do? How much work have they done in this industry by job, and to understand me? Because there's some people that have one or two categories, and people are now voting for popularity. Because my father's time, we found out, what did you do? How much work did you do? And that person was experienced, and they ended up being, in my opinion, a proficient officer, prepared to do their job. Instead of learning, they already understood their job. So when they go into the boardroom against the employers or with the employers, they know what they're saying, and they're strong in character.
Right. So what do what do you say to a younger member about getting involved and why? You know, a lot of these younger guys live so far outside the union. It's hard to, you know, a lot of the casuals that got in and are IDs now, even Class A. I mean, it's like a lot of people just can't afford to live, you know, where we're working right now. So how do we keep these guys engaged with what's happening in the union? And what are your thoughts like on a social media platform for the union? Having a place where we can talk kind of like we are right here, but it's like sanctioned by the union, and it's ideas from the union that come out that we show the membership and that we show the public. And I know we can't talk about everything, you know, when we do that, but what are your thoughts like on a platform and trying to expand our reach?
I believe it's necessary now because the members are more on the social media. I personally am not a social media person, but I understand the value it can bring. But the membership or the officers now, the executive board, the people, they're very protective of the union, and I respect that. They're there to protect it. But I think now we now have a channels, or everybody's now becoming a social media influencer. And if we can get near or speak to the public, because there's always been bad perceptions of us, because news media has given us bad perception or bad questions or made us look like fools and goofs. But now we can control our TV station, which is now public media. We can control the best people to speak and speak out to the public and speak to the shippers. I would like to actually see the shippers listen to some of these conversations that it's ever said, sanctioned by the union and our officers and our executive board, because then we can speak to the employers, because I believe there's a division between the Pacific Maritime Association and the shippers, and they speak for the shippers, and we should be able to speak directly to the shippers more and show them that we're the people they've always had and will always be. But we had some tough negotiations 20 years ago, and the PMA is still keeping up that rhetoric. And the person who came to resolve some hard times with us, they were gone, and it didn't work out so much for them in the year 2002. But yet the PMA still keeps up with this argue, harass, arbitrate, say no. In the days prior to that, I was involved in the union, and there was good labor relations, and people had more peace in heart to serve their jobs and to do the right thing. And I would like to see us and the employers, especially the employers, hear this and have us the ability to go back to those days of great labor relations where we're intertwined friends again. There was an old saying, Harry Bridges, let's get in bed with the employers. And when we were in bed with them, we were friends. There was nothing wrong with that. There always has to be labor relations, and share with them what they need and what they do. We haven't been engaged with them for over 20 years, show them what type of equipment they need to order, what's best for them. They have never really reached out to us with the growth of their plans, and it's become kind of not as friendly or adversarial through the people. I would like to see labor relations again like 20 years ago.
Yeah, you know, it's funny that you mentioned 20 years ago, Jay, because myself, I've been in 25 years. And I feel like in the early 2000s, I just feel like there was a shift. I remember I used to get my orders from a boss. And I just don't feel like I'm getting orders from a boss anymore. And it's just, I see so many superintendents running around the yard. And to me, I think to myself, if a company's trying to save money, you know, why aren't they letting bosses? I feel like the bosses didn't run the jobs like they used to 20 years ago. I feel like cargo used to flow. I just feel like we used to know what to do back then, and it seems like over the last 20 years, it's kind of gone to shit, you know, is what I would say.
You're totally right. Prior to the 2002 contract and lockout, probably in the 1999 year, the employers had an idea. Can't prove it, but they started ramping up and hiring superintendents all over the West Coast. And at one time, it was reported that they had up to 2,500 superintendents coastwide, which to me, in our opinion, it was a small workforce to replace us. But that's okay. It was never spoken, but it was in our side. We believe it was that. But brings that nothing ever happened in 2002, and we have our jobs. We're doing fine, but in turn, you have a lot of superintendents making decisions that are decisions to make. We move the cargo. Let us make our decisions to move your cargo. There's so many decisions to stop something that has a good rhythm and a good flow that somebody will come in and want to change the decisions hourly or every 2 hours. Instead of having a good flow, they change things all the time, and it's actually, I believe, slowed down the production on the ship operations, the dock operations, and the rail operations, because there's so many superintendents, try to prove why they're there, and I respect that. Every man and woman
Absolutely.
pretended to a union job tries to prove their worth, and I respect that. But at some point in time, it's kind of gotten in our way. It's gotten in the way of moving cargo and containers to the ship and from the ship, coming and going. And I know that, and I believe that.
I do too. And I feel like with
And I mean, respect to the superintendents, because we all need a job to provide for our families. But just one man's opinion.
right. So let me ask you. So back in your days, way back, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, how many superintendents used to be on the job? How many guys would you see?
I don't want to. I don't want to. It was. You only had like 3 or 4. Now you have up to 20, many multiples. So it grew.
That's a
Of
lot.
course, the amount of containers has grown exponentially, but it doesn't mean you've had to have, I believe, that many superintendents um, around, because you kind of can actually see them bumping into each other, or they're in rooms and they're all over. I'm just going, oh, but that's okay. Every man needs to eat, and woman needs to feed their family, their management, and I respect that. But I don't know if that many is necessary.
Right. So
It gets in the way with the decision of moving a cargo, because a lot of youngsters, our youngsters and their youngsters, want to be making an impression. And for them, it's much harder because we're in a union. We will always have a job. Them, it's pretty rugged. I would never want to be in management because it's ruthless, and I respect them because they don't have a hall to go to. So I'm very careful about not wanting to offend, but we do have our positions, and I would love for the employers, the shippers, to get back with us, because I would love the dignity and the self-respect to move their cargo, because I take respect in my job being a crane operator and a longshoreman, and I haven't had those. It's still almost like a game or a sports thing where you take respect and self-dignity in moving their cargo and say, man, I did something very good that day.
right.
I take pride in my work, and a lot of us don't feel that pride anymore because it's taken from us by others that shouldn't be making those decisions. That is not to be so personal, but that's our cargo to move. Let us move our cargo. Give us our self-respect and dignity back in moving our cargo for you.
So back looking at leadership back in your days, who did you look up to? Who did you like? I mean, did you take somebody and emulate what you thought was good, that you saw that was like a foundation that you wanted to keep in the union? I mean, I know there's a lot of tradition, and that's why I come to you when I talk to you, Jay. It's just like every time I talk to you something about this union, you have a remark, an answer almost for everything, man. So tell us about some of the leaders in the past that you looked up to, and what they did, and what you see like for the future of coming down the line, what you'd like to see.
There was a gentleman who really inspired me, who asked me to keep running. His name was Jack Dillon. He was a friend of my father's, but a well-written man, the secretary-treasurer, very intelligent. He taught me how you use your contract, how it reads, because a lot of times you can just read it, but it's specific, and you should understand each part of Section 14, Section 2, Section 4, and which comes first and which comes second, because it's not just simply read. It's to understand the books itself, the PCLCD and the PCMSC, the safety and the master contract. Um, there's another gentleman, Al Parasol. He happened to be an arbitrator for autos and NFL. And I just happened to meet these people, and they would come and speak to me like I'm a very, very young man, and I'm asking them who's who, who's this, and I started finding out these men were. We have a lot of men and some women, I believe, that have other jobs off the industry, and a couple were actually arbitrators for airline pilots, for football, baseball, and other things. I never knew these people were such great people, and they were actually find me, or we would find each other. And next thing you know, these guys, gentlemen, would come speak to me, and I knew the original arbitrator personally, George Love, who was appointed by Stan Cagle, who was appointed by Harry Bridges from the 30s. So I knew George Love 20 years ago and had many hours of sitting with him, asking him what he did in the 40s, 50s, and 60s as the first arbitrator in Southern California. Then I knew John Pandora, who was the other arbitrator. Then we had a gentleman named David Miller, who he was the last solo arbitrator. Now we have a panel. So I've had the opportunity to know everybody personally and be able to. Rudy Rubio was a very instrumental person also in my family. He was my dad's friend, and he became the international vice president, personal friend of the family. I could call him anytime. All these men I could call at any time and ask them a question.
I feel the same way about you.
And what is what I respected about these gentlemen, they never, like God would say, don't give a man a fish, teach him how to fish. They never gave me answers. They told me where to look, where to read, and every one of them taught me how to think, not giving me answers so I would be lazy. So I have evolved through all these gentlemen, their teachings.
I respect that, Jay, because I've learned so much from you since we started being crane instructors together, and you just gave me so much education, like every time we talk, because I just had a million questions just about everything, and I appreciate that. So my worry is, Jay, I mean, you're not that much older than me, but you're closer to retirement than I am. And what I'm worried about is with automation and AI and things just rapidly changing so fast before our eyes, I'm afraid that our younger generation is going to push you guys aside. And I feel like there's a path for both of us that we need to get the old school and the new school together and like blend this so that we can push forward. And that's why I always tell people to talk to an older member about what it takes to be a strong union member. What do you say to the younger guys to get them to understand what it takes to be a true union brother and sister?
Well, discover who's who in the union. Ask around for other people, because not only in Local 13, there's people that are bosses and clerks because of their time. There are some great people that have actually left our division to naturally go to be a foreman. And it's a long list of people that have participated in our union. Some are clerks also. But there's still some history in all three divisions that started in Local 13. And they have a lot of things to share. But nobody knows who they are. But if some of the members would engage themselves with some of the other bosses or some of the other people, and ask me, who's that? Be inquisitive. It's upon our members to find out who is who. You just don't stand there and say, who do I vote for? Start asking who is who. Get an opinion from other people and ask them. It's normal in the 40s, the 50s. People would discuss, well, who is that? What did they do? It's okay to be curious, to be inquisitive, and ask somebody that you believe you trust as a boss or clerk or somebody, or a longshoreman in the hall, and ask them, well, who is that running? What have they done? What have they served? What is their experience? And I personally voted sometimes for people 20, 30 years ago that I particularly didn't like off the job, but I knew they're going to be the right person in the union fighting for me.
Yeah.
I'm not looking to go home with friends. I got a lot of friends, but you want somebody who's going to fight for your union, tooth and nail.
Right. See,
And that's what you.
I feel
I'm
like
not
we're going to lose that if with you
I'm
guys.
not going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you the truth, and if you don't appreciate it, then that's on you.
Right.
And that's a lot of people nowadays, because a lot of people are telling some of the members what they want to hear instead of telling the truth, and some may not even know the truth, because a lot of things now that are moving, there's a lot of things behind that moving container, that moving part, logistically. The logistics have different moving parts than it did when it was a sack on a pellet board where my grandfather and father worked it. And I seen logistics change now because everybody wants to move in. And now this has become such a lucrative business in the shipping, because when I started, you had Irish crew members, you had Norwegian crew members, you had English, you had French. I remember seeing every race, Yugoslavian. Now you just see a lot of Asians and some other Koreans, stuff like that, are crew members. And there's, like I said, there's shippers from all around the world. Now it's become probably 7 shippers or 8 shippers in the world, becoming pretty controlling of all the seas and all the containers. And that's the threat that I don't care about, that I don't like, is it shrank down to a smaller group of giant shippers that are trying to control us. But is what I really love and appreciate is we're here in America, and they're going to act accordingly in America when they use our docks.
Right.
And we need state politicians and our national politicians working with us to protect our jobs. And it's important for our members to pay attention to their California politicians and their national politicians. If they don't serve, write them a letter, or if they have social media, send them what they don't care. That's what we need the members to do, is speak to our representatives and say, well, if you can't help us here protect a good American job, what are you here for? Because they, the people, the elected people, serve us, not those interests. And they should be served. That's the way it was up until the 80s. And that's another long story about why politicians make so much money. I won't go down.
So, Jay, elections are coming up in April. And I know that people are looking for leadership. They're looking for people to vote for. And I've been egging you to come back and serve the union before you leave, to educate some of our younger members with that experience you have, with experience a lot of our leaders have. I mean, our past president, I think he's just a fantastic leader and has so much to share with people. But I feel like when we do these forums at the hall, or, I just feel like they don't have enough time to explain what's happening, and they're always cut off. Someone's always angry, blurting out something, and that's where I think we need to find a path, is so that we can listen to one another, learn from one another, and start creating a path for the future.
Actually, you just brought a thought to my mind, and I try to say this with great sincerity. Back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, there was great respect for your officers. People sat down and listened with respect and did not interrupt. But in the 90s, there became a lack and a tail off of respect for the officers. So people would disrupt meetings from the floor, and they were doing it because it seemed people became a little more self-involved. Excuse me, and they were kind of disrupting a lot of meetings, so people stopped coming to the meetings. And I actually think this is a good idea to shift and pivot to this, because now with the TV media, or with the media, with your platform that the union can learn, they could put a meeting together, and anybody can watch it at the time. They can watch it Sunday morning, Saturday morning,
Yeah.
instead of a one-off deal, and watch somebody come disrupt it and really destroy a meeting. I think this could have peace in it, and people could learn something. They can learn more through this social media than going to a meeting, and people get angst and pain, because I've seen a lot of people come and go, and they watch the people. It only takes a few to mess it for the rest of us.
Right.
This is a way to take back control, so you're not interrupted, and true officers and people can send and give all the information that the members need. And actually, as I'm thinking about it now, this is a better platform for that reason. The membership will be informed much better and much more in peace, because this is the new day and the technology is here. And I think we should embrace it to teach our members in peace.
See, it's so weird to have a guy that actually laid down the law with not talking to the media, and it's just you're not even. I don't even think you know how to open up a computer, and it's just amazing to me how we've talked over the last year and a half, and you just seem to understand so much about media and social media, even though you don't have anything, you've never been on anything. It's just, I feel like you're a visionary. I feel like you see this, what you call the pivot.
Well, keep a peripheral vision, keep wide open. I don't have an agenda. And I remember years ago, before I became an officer, the news companies would always come down around contract time, and they would just interview anybody, and they would interview somebody that's not really prepared to speak.
Right.
And people love a camera. People things, and then they would put those people on the nightly news, and I would go, "Oh my goodness, here we go," and I would feel really bummed out. So when it was my time to serve the union, I was very lucky to serve. God bless and thank you for the opportunity. I remembered that, and at that time, I knew things were going south with they had a plan for us, which wasn't a good one.
Right.
And I was telling the members, please do not speak to the press, make no statements. Those are for your officers. And I'm grateful that the union and the members did that, because after that, they never did it again. Because during the 2002 lockout, they were coming and camped out in front of our office for 2 to 3 months. Before there was the big cable networks in 2002, there's 2, 4, 7, and 11.
Right.
The truck at 7 in the morning waiting for us to get there at 7:30 in the morning, asking us for interviews every morning. We said no comment, no comment, which was a good position, because if we responded and we weren't prepared, they would put the cameras on us and ask us questions unbalanced. And a lot of times, I never wanted to look like a goof, so I just refused to do interviews.
Right.
Until now, we can control what we say now. And that's, if I would have saw this 22 years ago, I would have said we're going to use social media now, because this is our TV station to say to the public and to the other unions around the world. Because the unions we all need to do a global dockers meeting. I believe there's a gentleman named David Arian who started these things over 25 years ago, but I believe we stopped doing them. But it's time now, the greatest time I believe in union history, for unions to come together and meet each other. Unions inland and coast-wide longshoremen, because the Hawaiians are very successful from negotiating as the longshoremen who negotiated in Hawaii in the 40s, and now Hawaii organizes their plantations, pineapples and sugar and telephones, golf courses. They do everything. They turn around, instead of looking at the water, the Hawaiians turned around, looked inland, and went inland and started organizing and grabbing everything. And I believe that's the most important thing too, is the unions should not only keep on the docks, we should go inland and start organizing inland. And I was very happy to see this calendar 2023 year, so many unions went on strike. In all my 62 years, I've never seen so many strikes on TV in my life, and I was amazed, impressed, and happy to see so many union people, and it needs to be stronger. I think that we've gone down. There's only one way, and that's back up for unions to grow again. And I was impressed, and we need to go inland and meet all these other unions and be strong like we were in the 30s. Because back when we started the union, they were shooting people in the port of San Francisco and LA. San Francisco was very strong, and the meat, the retail, and the, I believe, the restaurants, they were all union. Everybody took days off to honor the longshoremen, and that's national unionism. And I'm not trying to be like a communist or something of our unions. And I would like to see our unions restructure itself and rebirth and regrow as it did. There's original footprints, original blueprints. Let's go back to those days and be strong again with each other and respect each other, help each other.
Man, I remember, I got to tell you, in the early 2000s, I really felt we were strong. I felt a sense of pride, man, because it was like even other unions, other ports and everything, they kind of looked up towards us, you know, as the leader for what was happening on the industry with safety and how cargo moved and how we man these jobs. I feel like a lot of other unions around the world kind of followed our lead into what
They
we
did
did.
a lot of this unions did some significant things supporting other ports around the world, and they remember that. And they still, it's almost like a Columbus Day or a special day because other unions, and we would work ships from different ports in the world, and it was going to be a grave hit to us, but we had to do it as a union, even though they're halfway around the world, and it was significant. Those ports never forgot it. They still haven't forgotten it,
Right.
and that's 20 years of the union. I have 43 years in this. So a lot of this action was going down 30 years ago, 20 years ago, and this union has always been known to be supportive for other ports around the world. And see, if we have, it's not trying to harm the shippers, but if we work in harmony with all the other ones, everybody will be successful. There's plenty of room for everybody, plenty of money for everybody. That's the universal thought, I believe. We can all make money together. Why argue? Let's work and move their cargo, go home, because even the shippers, they have families and kids. We have families and kids. Let's work our problems out, and go peacefully.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. So, Jay, big question. Before you retire, would you be willing to serve again?
Serve food, or I I would like to serve. I still feel there's enough left in my tank to scrap and fight. I kind of like it because I wake up every day with like a challenge, and it's not been there for a while. And I would like to serve and teach. I'd like to serve and
Teach,
be able.
Jay, you're
I
a
want to.
phenomenal teacher.
Oh, I hope. Thank you. But I would like to see us be friends again with the shippers and say, "This is what we can do for you. This is what we can do for you." Because we're never going to leave. They're going to deal with us for another 100 years, and I want the members to know that they're going to be here for years. Because as long as we play smart, do smart, we stay here and keep moving cargo. Of course, there's going to be little scraps and nicks and dings from the shippers in negotiations every 6 years, but it doesn't mean we're not going to go anywhere. We're going to be here. We just negotiate, and I would like to show the employers that we're the right people for them. Let the employers, the shippers, give us our due respect to move their cargo and make the calls, and then watch their cargo and production go up. I know that's not a great word for our union people, but they do deserve a good product. Because I will say this, and hopefully the members don't get it wrong. I've never had a check bounce, and I've always made more money every year. I've always made a reasonable increase in my wages. So I'm not going to go all out and say bad things about the employers because my checks have always been in the bank every Friday, and it's been dependable and reliable.
Right.
So I and have gratitude for my union who's created great conditions, wages, and hours for me.
That's fantastic. Jay, I just want to thank you, man, for coming on and talking with me. And then I wanted to ask you, um, I'm gonna post this, and I know we're gonna get a lot of comments. I know a lot of members are probably gonna come up to you down at the hall and talk to you. And
We're
but I'd like to know if you'd come back and talk again, and we could go through some of these comments of what people have to say, and maybe you can answer a lot of questions that I haven't even thought of to ask you, because I get bombarded all the time with a lot of questions, man. But I tell people, I always talk about you and like Ramon, because it's like when I talk to you guys, I feel like I'm talking to an AI. Because when I ask you something, there's no pause. When I talk to you, it just seems to spit right out, man. And to me, I think that's important because I know
believe that.
you're not unwavering on your decision or what you're thinking about.
Well, me and Ramon come from Ramon's the third generation as I am, and our hearts in the union, our hearts in this job, because we both live fantastic lives for this. And what can you do when something's been so generous to you, but to give something back the best you can? And I just feel amazed and lucky that I've lived such a good life.
Right.
Honestly, I mean, I I live as good as somebody who went to a good major college. I mean, I've had the best benefits. I've had some medical issues that they paid every dime, every bill, and it was quite expensive. Went through a little bit of cancer, and they paid. I saw the best doctors in the country, and that's because of negotiation of our unions and the employers paid to give us our medical. So I have a lot of gratitude now than I even did then. I'd like to share that my gratitude for living because if I didn't have such good medical, I might not have been here right now.
Right.
I
Agreed,
don't
man.
know how hooked up, but I have.
That's great, man. I love it, Jay. Well, Jay, thank you, man, for coming on. Is there anything else that you want to say that you think we should know or you'd like to say anything to the members?
Harry Bridges.
Harry Bridges, man. Absolutely. You know, Harry Bridges, I go on the thought, Jay, that Harry Bridges said when you come into this union, when you leave, you should leave it better than the way it was when you came in.
May I say one thing?
Sure.
The not up anything. It's not what your union can do for you. What can you do for your union?
Absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely, Jay. That's fantastic, man. All right, Jay, thank you very much, man. Everybody, thank you for tuning in, man. If you have any questions, please leave some comments, and I'll try and get Jay to come back, and we'll go through some of those comments and talk again. And then if you're down there on the docks, man, don't be afraid to walk up to this guy and talk to him. This guy is an information bank, a wealth of information, man. So, Jay, with that being said, man, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And now, Jay, I'm just going to go ahead and